All right. You heard the term voting with your feet?
Yes.
Yeah. Voting with your feet and voting with moving trucks.
Yes.
It's all about voting with dollars. Mm-hmm. That's really what we're talking about. So keep in mind, as Susie just mentioned a couple minutes ago, Missouri lawmakers are debating how to cut taxes.
Yes.
Which and how.
Not whether.
Right. Illinois lawmakers are continuing to look for any way possible to raise taxes everywhere, generally to shift that money up to Chicago and try to bail out all their failing stuff.
Sure.
But I say all that to keep in mind the difference on each side of the river here when you look at the national picture. And we're now joined by Brandon Arnold from the National Taxpayers Union. And Brandon, interesting, I guess, blog article, op-ed that you wrote the other day. Taxpayers in high tax states are fleeing to low tax states. And so we're not just talking about, us conservatives want low taxes and big government, small government. There are real world implications to these wonky policy things. What is it that the information that you were kind of boiling down, what is that showing in real time in real life?
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning. Thanks so much for having me on the program here. What we knew was that people were leaving these high tax states. What we didn't know is the rate at which they were leaving. So we were examining the data that comes out of the IRS and seeing that states like California weren't just losing people fast. It was 1 minute and 44 seconds. That's all the time that it takes for a Californian to pack up his or her bags, and leave for greener pastures. In New York, it was just over 2 minutes. Illinois is in the same boat. All of these high-tax states, and they're not just high-tax states, they're high-spending states, high-regulatory states, anti-business climate states in many circumstances, are leaving for greener pastures. And I think the smart policymakers out there, and I think your governor is one of them, are starting to see this and starting to recognize we need to think of our states as a business. We need to offer products in the terms of infrastructure, schools, and so forth at low prices in the form of lower taxes. And if we do that, just like businesses that offer good products at low prices, they're going to succeed. They're going to attract more customers, in this case, more taxpayers.
Brandon, this is Susie Moore. When we see this sort of mass migration amongst the states and you see people from the high tax states moving to the low tax states, what does that do in terms of the political ramifications? Because at some point a population shift means a difference. I mean, I know we're all are talking about redistricting right now, but it's going to make a difference in terms of representation on the national level and the politics of each individual state.
Yeah, it does change the politics a lot. I think the first thing you look at is redistricting. Obviously, when you have larger populations, you have more clout in Congress, you have more representatives in the House of Representatives. That's a good thing for your state. It also creates economic benefits when you have businesses, individuals moving to your state, generating more activity. Their activities create more sales tax revenue, more, if you have an income tax, more income tax revenue, property tax revenue, because they're buying homes, they're buying stuff, they're participating in the state's economy. And the third thing, this comes from a friend of mine in New Hampshire who noticed there are more and more Massachusetts license plates in their state. New Hampshire, of course, is one of the states that has no income tax. So they've lured a lot of people from surrounding states to the state of New Hampshire. And he noticed that not only are we seeing people from out of state move to New Hampshire, the people that are moving there are the people that see the value in low taxes. They're not moving there and then saying, hey, let's raise taxes in New Hampshire. They're moving there because they're refugees from these high-tax states and they want to keep that pro-business, pro-taxpayer climate in New Hampshire. So I think that's been a good thing for these low-tax states, New Hampshire, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, and so forth.
Well, New Hampshire lured my brother and his wife from Illinois. Out there.
There you go.
Yeah. So Brandon, let me follow up on that, because a lot of times what you'll hear, like, for instance, from the left or from somebody who's like pushing, it's just a little tax. We got to have it for the fill in the blank schools, libraries, ambulance, whatever it is. And they say people don't make decisions. They're not going to move out of town because we raised the property tax a little bit. We're not going to move out of town because, we added the sales tax because, it's what we got to deliver. And so you hear that mostly from the left, but from a disturbing number of people in the middle or even center right on it these days. And what I'm seeing in the sources that you wrote about and linked to and all that kind of stuff is that no, at some point there is a tipping point and people will make a life decision, leave a community if the policy is bad enough, because the conventional wisdom for years is, people may complain and stomp their feet a little bit. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes, but they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, that was what New York and a lot of these states used to claim for a long time. And they would also say, people are leaving to Florida. It's just the senior citizens. People are retiring. They're moving to Florida. They want to play golf or pickleball or what have you. They want the warm climate. I think the data suggests a very, very different story. People are leaving, not just senior citizens moving to Florida. We're seeing young families move to Florida, to Texas, to the Carolinas. We're seeing the business community relocate for greener pastures once again. And they're not moving their families. They're not voluntarily taking their families to states that have inferior educational systems, that have potholes in the road, that don't have parks and the other things that taxpayers want to see. These states are delivering services that people want. Florida has improved their education dramatically. They're a very strong educational state now. So New York can't simply hide behind the fact that they provide, quote unquote, better services, better schools, and so forth. That is no longer true, and people see it. And again, they're voting with their feet. And the other thing I should note here, spending plays such a large role in this, and I think that's another thing your governor's gotten right. This can't just be about taxes. It's got to be about spending. New York is spending twice on a per taxpayer basis what Florida is spending on its residents, twice. So until they get that spending situation resolved, the taxes are almost an inevitability. They can't get out of their own way in Albany. Fix the spending situation. That will create the fiscal space that allows you to lower taxes and ultimately attract residents or keep residents from leaving your state.
Brandon, we know who some of the worst offenders, which states are some of the worst offenders here: California, New York, Illinois. Which states are benefiting from this migration the most, and what is it about their policies, specifically their tax policies, that is attracting people to move to them?
Yeah, let me just point out the top 5 here. Florida is number 1. They're picking up a new taxpayer every 2 minutes, roughly, just over 2 minutes. Texas is number 2, about every 2.5 minutes. Somebody is packing their bags and moving to the state of Texas. What do those states have in common? Well, geographically, they're in the southeast, but more importantly, they're zero income tax states. Picking up after those two are the 2 Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina, both low tax states where they do have income taxes. And then your neighbor Tennessee comes in at number 5. Tennessee, of course, another no income tax state that has actually taken additional steps to eliminate some of its investment taxes in recent years. So the states that are attracting people are these low tax or even no tax states. The secret sauce isn't all that secret anymore. You reduce your taxes, you provide a business-friendly climate, and guess what? People want to move there. Businesses want to move there. Families want to move there.
And I want to point out, North Carolina is not exactly a bright red state. There's plenty of Democratic politics, in North Carolina. So it's not even necessarily just a red and blue state, although I suspect the red states generally are going to have better tax policy, but does North Carolina show states like Illinois or some of the others where you've got a lot of more fiscally conservative people in blue states? Does it show that, you can still have a mixed bag politically and still have decent tax policy?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. North Carolina is a purple state. It's up for grabs in presidential elections, and they've had more Democratic governors than they've had Republican governors in recent years. But yeah, they passed about a dozen years ago one of the real landmark tax reform bills. They built in spending triggers. They lowered tax rates. They didn't zero out their income tax, but hopefully they'll get there at some point. And all the folks on the left, when they passed that bill a dozen years ago, said, this is going to be the end of the state. We're not going to be able to educate our kids. We're not going to be able to fix those potholes in the road. And guess what? That didn't materialize. The state is stronger than ever. Hopefully they'll be able to explore some additional tax relief down the road. And people are moving there in droves. Now the problems that residents have aren't as much with the taxes. The problems that people have down there are the fact that traffic has gotten really bad in Raleigh and Charlotte. The property values are going up significantly, and these are serious problems, but I'll tell you, they're much better problems than the ones that folks are dealing with in Massachusetts, in Illinois, and California, where they're scrambling to keep people from leaving and trying all sorts of hokey ideas like exit taxes or wealth taxes, all of these ridiculous left-wing ideas trying to preserve their tax base. It's a flailing mess in so many of these high-tax blue states right now.
We know Missouri is looking very closely at doing away with the income tax. What other states are seriously considering that? Because, at some point, obviously, there's going to become a competition amongst those states. But do we know who else is looking into doing away with their income tax?
Well, Arkansas has considered tax reform. Nebraska has been kicking around tax reform. You talk about states with Democratic governors, even Colorado with Governor Polis there, who's a former member of Congress, has said we need to do something about our tax code here in order to preserve our tax base, prevent people from leaving our state. So I think that more and more people are seeing the success stories led by Florida and Texas, but not just those states. Kansas made a mistake with their original tax reform bill, but eventually I think they've come around and made some improvements to their tax code. More and more states are getting the message here that this, again, you have to look at your state like a business, and businesses that offer overpriced services and don't deliver to taxpayers what they're expecting are ultimately going to see more and more people leaving their state, more and more businesses leaving their state.
Okay, the poster, the op-ed is called Taxpayers in High Tax States Are Fleeing to Low Tax States. Pretty simple. It's at the National Taxpayers Union website, which we'll give you here in a second. Brandon Arnold from NTU is right here with us. I'm just amazed when you break it down to how many people are moving per minute. On average, when you say Florida picks up somebody every 2 minutes, that puts it in a very, very real sense that I would hope lawmakers at all states would understand. I would love to be there for there to be a brutal competition over who can make the taxes the lowest, and then you would see obviously the businesses thrive in there as well. So where do we learn more about what you all are tracking, what you're doing? Because the bottom line is, I want Missouri lawmakers. I would love for Illinois lawmakers to do it too, but I'd like for Missouri lawmakers to say, okay, what's working? Here's a source for it. Let's do more of that.
Yeah, we're at NTU.org, nationaltaxpayers.org, nationaltaxpayersunion.org. We've got a lot of research out there. We're trying to slice and dice this information in ways that really are digestible and easy for us to wrap our minds around. So that's why we contextualize it like this, talking about the pace at which people are leaving these states and are flocking to Texas, Florida, and other states. So check us out. We're all over social media as well, of course, Facebook and X and all that.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.